Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the grand final for season 4. Our final two players have played their maps in a best of 3 contest, and we have a winner. So we will go through that game by game and unravel it for you as it happened. So we won't spoil anything right off the start. My name is Zotomo, and I'm joined, as always, by Calamity. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good.
Great. And our special guest this week is MrBlue, another Division One participant. He missed out on the playoffs this season, but was in the semifinals last season in season 3. How are you?
I'm doing very well as well. Thank you for having me on the show again.
No problem. Great to have you back. And actually, we're going to start with just asking you about your season. Definitely a lot more competitive this time around, and we actually see you drop out of that top 4, unfortunately.
Yeah, but altogether, I was pretty happy with the season. Of course, I made a few mistakes here and there, but altogether, top 6 finish, 3 wins, 3 losses, 3 draws. I think I did okay. Of course, as I said, with a few mistakes in some rounds that I could have maybe done better, but then otherwise, in some other rounds, I could have easily made a mistake where I did not do it. And in the end, I think that with the strong competition that we had this season, did go as expected. I was hoping to stay away from relegation. I was hoping to make the playoffs. Missed out on that just by a point, and but the competition was so strong that it's even with only 1 point difference, you end up in 6th place. I think the 5th score in total score. So yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, definitely. And we got to remember that we had 2 less players in Division 1 this season. So there were 12 players last season, only 10 this time.
As well,
yeah. So your total score is down, but I would have to do the math of exactly how many average points across all the games. But I don't think it dropped much at all. I think just the competition was pretty fierce. Not to mention the 4 and 3 perfect games by the competitors were pretty high. But from somebody in Division 1, what did you think of the map pool we had this season?
It was a bit different than the previous years, I would say, but maybe a little bit on the easy side for some of the countries. Whereas then for the Japanese one, there was this one round where like it was basically a guess where you needed to plunk the marker, even though there were some hints apparently, but I didn't find them. So yeah, this is. Like some maps were easier than expected, whereas other ones were maybe a little bit more tricky. So yeah, it opened up the divisions, of course, and I think in the end, the best player comes out anyway. So yeah.
Great. And anything to say about next season? Are you looking forward to coming back and competing in Division 1 again?
Of course, always looking forward to that. Calamity will be the organizer this time and player. So that's going to be quite interesting. I don't have we played. I think we played in Division 2. Oh no, you played Division 3 back then, and I was.
Yeah, we've never actually met.
Oh, you guys actually missed each other.
So,
oh, okay.
Yeah, and the same goes for Baseman. I never played him as well. So he's going to get promoted. Plucky is going to get promoted. So it's going to be another strong division for sure. Knowing that the 2 players that were a little bit less motivated this year are dropping out. Or maybe 3 actually. So yeah, that's they will be replaced by motivated players. So
yeah, definitely looking forward to a very exciting season 5. Actually, only a couple of months. It seems like crazy, but we're already in the early stages of planning the next season as we just wrap up this one. But yeah, let's get to that final now. And yeah, Boxa and Raidman were in the final up against each other. Let's just a quick reminder of how they got here. Boxa beating Blinky and Raidman beating Orpheus on a world map. Raidman with a pretty strong win over Orpheus, but Boxa had a pretty good fight on his hands with Blinky, but it came out on top. And again, it was a best of 3. Boxa's pick was Germany, just like last season. Raidman picked Lower Silesia, which is a change from Singapore in the last 2 finals. And then we had a decider map if we needed it. AI generated world as our 3rd. And let's take a look then at Germany for our first result. And Calamity, it was pretty close, but both players did drop points.
Yeah, it was not the most difficult seed, but then again, Germany, you're most of the time in a relatively big city anyway. You just gotta hope you're not too far on the outskirts of it in some sort of suburb and walk around in circles and find nothing, which did happen to me in one of the rounds. Interestingly, not round 4, where both of them made a mistake. If we want to talk about the seed itself and the locations for a bit, we started us off in round 1 in Leipzig, which was a relatively easy location. All of the information you needed was within like 50 meters. You didn't even have to leave the road you started on. And so, of course, no mistakes there by either of them. Before we went into the state of Nordrhein-Westfalen for all the remaining rounds, as Germany's seeds sometimes go, with 2 rounds down there in Bonn in the south of Nordrhein-Westfalen and 1 round each in Bochum and Essen. All of those rounds, I would say, the seed as a whole didn't really have anything too tricky. The problem you can just always have with Germany is sometimes you just go the wrong way and you don't really see the information you need to see. But I think for Box and Raidman, it didn't happen in any of the locations in this seed, or at least if it did, then they eventually made up for it. The all deciding round in this one, round 4, was actually also not that difficult of a round, but it had maybe slightly tricky movement where it took you a bit to try and click forward to make your way out of the starting area. And it was sort of in a bit of a residential area. There were a couple of apartment blocks next to you. You had all the information to make it to. You had all the time in the world to make it to the information you needed to get the right place, but both of them eventually ran out of time. Very, very close to the right location, but both of them missed the pinpoint. And distance-wise, if you just look at the other rounds, the other 5Ks, Raidman was actually closer. So it really came down to this one for Boxer. And Boxer was actually only 25 meters away from this one as well. So he was maybe about 20, 30 centimeters away from getting a perfect score in that one. Raidman about 42 meters. So he would have needed about 10 meters closer to win out on this one.
Yeah, definitely. MrBlue, I assume that you played the seed as well. Did you find round 4 just as tricky to pinpoint?
Well, I didn't really play it in that much of how do you say it, like that much
Detail
to actually go through the whole the whole situation, like the whole
Mhm.
seat. But what I did is, of course, look at the location, and yeah, I'm a little bit. I mean, like, yeah, if the time was an issue, that is one thing. But like looking at the actual location, the pinpointing itself did not seem to be too hard. What I did notice is that the actual coverage was a dead end, so you could not really see the next street name. But if you go the other way around, you could, yeah, see the other street name that you were at. That street name had like a few side roads with the same name, so maybe that was a bit confusing for them. And then also what you could use in order to pinpoint this, in my opinion, was the road direction, because that was slightly different than where they actually clicked.
See, well, that means that Boxa does take a game 1 and with just 1 point, so he is up 1-0. As we will transition into the lower Silesia map pick for Raidman, and yeah, MrBlue, he probably should have stuck with Singapore in this one. As you can see, Boxa getting a perfect game, and Raidman actually having trouble again in round 4.
I wouldn't say that he had to stick with Singapore. I think he he did a smart choice also to go for his home country. I think what he did not do smart here is to actually rush round 4, because he only spent 48 seconds to do that, and he was in the right road, and he just decided to click on an intersection where there was no intersection. So I really don't know what he did there. Maybe he just thought he was close enough and just went for it, but that seemed to be like the issue here. As for the other rounds, like the first round location was close to Legnica, a little bit south of that. Yeah, both of them did get an easy 5K there. Same goes for the other rounds actually that they played. Only the round 4 was the one where they lost points. Boleslaviec, or I don't know. I'm very bad in pronouncing Polish names, to be honest, but that was the second location in the outskirts of that city. Then they had another location in Bystrica Klocka, something like that. And the last round was in a town that I'm not even going to pronounce because that is way too difficult. Something Zdroj, at least. Yeah, but yeah, these rounds were all simple, and I think that even round 4 was simple as well. Boxer did really well, but Raidman just made a sloppy pinpoint mistake there.
Yeah, Calamity, a little bit of overconfidence in his home country then, perhaps?
I can already tell that neither of you read his comments. So let me tell you what transpired here. After 3 rounds that proved no problem whatsoever for him, it was external interference that cost him the game. After just 48 seconds, in a Hollywood-like twist, it was his brother who had, unbeknownst to Raidman himself, moved his arm, moving his mouse cursor onto the guess button in the process. The oblivious Raidman then wanted to move his map, clicked, and the damage was done. So yeah, bit unfortunate on that one.
Ouch, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. If anything, it just goes to show, don't play Geoguessr when you've got someone else in the room. But yeah, I think overall the seed was fairly easy, as was expected from Lois Elise. Kind of in difficulty, it's similar to Singapore. It's obviously much larger, but that also just gives you much less dense experience in terms of looking at the map, and you've got more than enough signs everywhere to help you find out where you are relatively quickly. I think actually the most difficult rounds, I think rounds 2, 3, and 4 are all not easy to pinpoint, but they did fairly well on those as well, with, the exception of the mishap of Raidman in round 4. I'm going to attempt to pronounce it. I'm going to call it Szczecin Stroj. Went all right, I think. Yeah, Polish is a difficult language to pronounce. But yeah, I think overall, definitely a deserved win for Boxer, but it's of course leaves a bit of a bitter taste in Raidman for that round 4 occurrence, because especially if you look at the rest, Raidman was closer significantly on the other rounds. So if he had just gotten a 5k there, he would have surely won that game and brought it to the decider map. But yeah, Boxer managed to take it home, and he continues the tradition of a different winner every season, and he's the first one to get home clean with a 2-0 victory as well.
Congrats to Boxa on the win and beating his rival from last season to the punch, where he just lost out in the second game too. There's a few meters that cost him the victory last time, and this time a little bit of luck on his side for that. We didn't get to the final map, Calamity, but it was a pretty interesting one, and one that probably would have given our competitors a good run for their money.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot more interesting than the decider map we had last season in terms of the difficulty of locations, because that one back then was fairly easy. This one actually proved to be quite troublesome, and I would have really enjoyed seeing how they would have done on it, because I played it personally. I only managed to 5k one of the locations, and with that, funnily enough, until like Max played very late on, so he managed to 2 5ks in the whole seed as well. Those were the only 3 5ks out of all the people who played that seed. No one else managed even a single 5k. We had a location very, very rural in New Zealand, where I found absolutely nothing to start with. Then we had a location in Taiwan, which again wasn't too urban, sort of in the middle of the country in the relatively mountainous parts. Not too difficult to find generally, but also, again, not easy to pinpoint. Then we had a location in Brazil. Again, incredibly rural. You eventually made your way to like a small village, but again, not easy to pinpoint. Then we moved over to the British Isles for the last 2 rounds, with a relatively easy location near Wexford in Ireland, and another location that was super difficult to find and pinpoint in sort of the northeast of the UK, sort of halfway between Middlesbrough and York.
Right, very interesting. Unfortunately, we didn't get to that. We're Boxa taking that 2-0 win over Raidman. So again, congrats to him. And actually, we got a pretty interesting stat table here that Calamity put together. Division 1 all time, all the different players who have been in the top division and their scores. played out from this one. So yeah, as you can see, Raidman has, of course, over his 38 games played in Division 1, the most point total, 84. But Boxa only 20 games, already at 53 points, sitting at third. And MrBlue, you too, only 2 complete seasons, sees you in fifth. So doing pretty well there. Yeah, so anything interesting that you wanted to point out in particular with this kind of statistic, Calamity?
I just thought it'd be quite nice to look at and also have in sort of the background for future seasons. It shows you a couple of things. Firstly, that Raidman and Simi are still the only ones remaining that have participated in Division 1 for all the seasons. And for Simi, this was his last season as well. So going forward, if Raidman continues to play, he'll be the only remaining player with all of the seasons in Division 1. Also quite interesting to look at is the insane average points from Boxer. You got to remember there though that you do get bonus points. So 2.65 average, while being very, very high, is not quite as impressive as it would be, for example, in something like football where, 3 is the maximum you can get every game day. But it's still like higher, much higher actually than everyone else's. Raidman's still sort of suffering from his not great first season all the way back then in that regard, but he's still 23 points ahead in terms of points, and he's also got more than, well, not more than, but he's got double the aces of anyone else. So I just found that quite interesting to look at. And yeah, apart from that, nothing too decisive here that you can really look at, but I just thought it'd be something quite nice to have going forward as well, and for some people to work towards, for them to be like, hey, maybe I finally made it to Division 1, at least I'll be on that all-time table eventually. And I do have it in full, which is going to show you the top 12 here.
Yeah.
So that you can, you have something that you can point towards later on, even if you do get relegated again, you can be like, hey, I made it at one time, I'm on there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, MrBlue, after 2 seasons in fifth place, not too bad. Any comments on your stats here?
Yeah, looking good actually. Because I can see that. I mean, like most people below me are also on 20 games, but still, it's nice to be there indeed. Good to see that I am still ahead of Werdog, even though that he beat me this season. So that is nice to see. Yeah, and I like this kind of stats. As you said, in football you have this as well, and I used to look at these kind of tables myself when I was younger as well a lot. So it's quite interesting to see that also coming in Reddit League.
Very nice. Yeah, it's really interesting to see that you are one of them, of the 4 top players who have over a 2-point average per game that they've played. Raidman, Boxa, you, and Orpheus. Really interesting. And oddly enough, all of you have been in the playoffs. So that bodes well for the stats that they are showing which players are indeed the strongest. Very nice. Yeah, with 38 games, almost 1 million points. That might be something for players to work for as well, Calamity, getting 1 million points in Division 1. Well, Raidman getting pretty close, 900,000.
We'll definitely see it from him next season.
Yeah, great. Well, our final thing we have is we always get on with the commissioner, and with Schmingo retiring, we thought we'd just stick with Calamity here, and he'll going to tell us his thoughts about going forward with Reddit League in season 5. So I know on Reddit you asked for the players to participate in a survey about the future of Reddit League, and you got some of those results to share with us now.
Yeah, I made that post. Well, I made that comment on the last post for the Reddit League. So I hope that most people saw it. I actually got a decent amount of answers. I got 25, which is about like a third of the players actually participating. So I think that's a good like sample size to be representative. I also wanted to quickly mention, because we, like MrBlue talked about it earlier, how I'll be hosting and participating. Most people probably aren't aware anymore, but that's actually not a new thing. Schmingo did take part in season 1 of Reddit League, and then just decided to take a step back from Geoguessr as a whole, which is why he wasn't playing anymore. And I think that worked very well back then, so I don't see why it wouldn't work now. Talking about the survey, it was in total consisting of about 8 questions. A lot of them, some very basic stuff, some stuff where I just wanted to sort of gauge the opinion of the participants, to be like, that might be something we look into in the future, but I'll just wanted to first see what do people think about it. And the first one was a very, very basic question, just because it A, always interested me, and B, we've had quite a few players that burned out on Geoguessr, some over some of the seasons. So I also kind of wanted to gauge, okay, how much do people actually practice? I gave them a couple of options. Option one was I don't practice at all, which actually no one replied. So at least everyone does some practice. Or the people that don't practice also don't read through the comments and just ignore the survey. Also possible. But yeah, almost half the player base, I think it was about 40 something percent of players practiced around 10 games on average. And I got one comment as well of something I was aware that obviously you don't practice the same amounts of games for every single map we play. You're probably going to practice less for world maps. You're going to practice more for countries you like, countries you enjoy, or more difficult countries. But on average, it seems like most people practice about 10 games. About 28% only play through the other division seeds and don't do any extra practice there. About 24% practice around 20 games or more. That was relatively open-ended. I think it was about like half-half, where 12% practiced around 20 games and 12% said they practiced more than that. Obviously very open-ended. That might be like, I practice 30 games. That might be I practice 200 games every time. I hope no one practices 200 games, but you never know. And yeah, obviously, as I said, it's different. It differs depending on the map you have. The next two questions actually were just general questions about what do people actually like about Reddit League? What do people not like about Reddit League? And I got a lot of answers that I was kind of expecting mostly on the, what do people enjoy, but also some interesting insights in some of the things people don't enjoy and that you might look at and be like, maybe you can change some of that. But yeah, for what people enjoyed, generally structure and organization. I think over the course of the 4 seasons we've had, posts like that Schmingo made were never really late. Like maybe sometimes it was a Wednesday, sometimes a Thursday, but they were always on time. There was never any real problems with structure and that kind of stuff. So that's definitely a bonus there. Difficulty is also something I got a lot, where people said, hey, this is a really high class competition. There's a lot of great players. It's difficult to do, to get the wins, but it also brings out the best in people, where they feel motivated to practice and to really get in there and get good results. Obviously, a lot of people also like the YouTube coverage. The Reddit League shows we do, the matches that we cover, and I think that also adds a little bit of extra, where you get a little bit of extra motivation, like maybe they'll say something nice about me next time. The other the other thing was yeah, sometimes maybe one day. A lot of people also liked sort of the prestige, I called it, where it's like this sort of feels like the most notable Geoguessr competition there is, with sort of the highest quality players in it, that has already been going for 4 seasons and like almost 2 years at this point, I think. So that definitely plays into it. And what people also enjoyed, although that was probably the most interesting part, because I had the exact same comments, or the exact same topic on what people didn't enjoy as well, which is the variety in the maps. A lot of people said they like how, there's a different country or a different continent every week, and there's a lot of different stuff you have to get familiar with. And I think it raises your level as a player a lot, because as I said, there's a lot of different stuff that you have to learn. And now going over to the things people did not enjoy, I think it was only like 1 or 2 comments, but there were also some comments that said, funnily enough, that some of the maps felt repetitive, which I guess, like thinking about it, maybe 3 world maps, like the world maps are a bit of the same every season. Some have a little bit of a theme. Then you've got the AI generated world always in the playoffs. Maybe that feels a bit repetitive. Maybe some countries feel a bit more repetitive than others as well. So yeah, we'll see if there is something to be done about that. But I think that's probably one of the things that just, eventually you're still playing a game where you get placed somewhere in the world and you have to click until you figure out where you are. So a bit of repetitiveness is eventually going to come into it anyway. But yeah, I think most of the comments about what people don't enjoy were about, being stressed, not doing well, and then lots of practice required, and practice being exhausting. Maybe sometimes you get a country that you don't really like, but at the same time you still feel, hey, I need to practice something, and then you don't enjoy that. Or you get stressed during a game, you get nervous, then you make a mistake, and then you feel bad about that. I definitely had my fair share of that, especially towards the end of season 3. So that's definitely understandable as well. But I think that's mostly a case of people themselves have to, a bit come to terms with it, and be a bit more used to just, hey, this is how it is, and I gotta do what's best for myself. And if what's best for myself is, hey, I gotta sit a season out, or hey, maybe this season I can't practice like 50 games every week, or I'll just burn out, then that's, I think, up to everyone themselves to come to terms with. And I'll do my best to make it possible. I had some comments that I had one comment in particular, I don't remember who it was from, that said the wait between seasons is too long. Where I went, or I say I went, where I kind of thought, well, it is relatively long, but at the same time, people burning out towards like the end of a season, I think it's good in terms of the length that it is right now, with about 2 to 3 months between every season. And I also had one singular comment about Division 4 and Division 5 feeling a bit hard to get out of, where the person themselves admitted that they didn't really know how to come up with a better solution for it. And I thought about it for like 20 minutes, but I didn't really get to a good solution either, because the only real options you have is either you make Division 4 or 5 smaller, so that you have less people to compete against and it feels easier to get up, or to make Division 3 bigger. But I think 12 players is the absolute maximum that a division should be, because then again we'll get into, hey, the season is getting longer, and then people are just going to burn out more. So I think that's not really an option either. And I think the main problem just comes from that there's 12 people in Division 3, there's 20 people in Division 4. Of course, you can't have the same amount of people like promote out of every side of Division 4 as you could, relegate from Division 3. So I think that's just based on that. Again, I'll think about it for a bit more during the off season, but I myself can't really think of a good solution to that. I think we had like 3 more comments that were slightly negative. One comment I got twice, sort of similar, from people that said, the head-to-head is a bit like random, where if you could just like replace matchups with other matchups, and suddenly like the table would look completely different. But I think that's a bit of the charm as well from it. Like, of course, some seasons are going to be more in your favor than others. But I still think like if you just get 25k every week, you're going to end up on top. So of course, the better you do, the higher up you will be. Not every season, sometimes you get unlucky, but on average, that's how it'll be always. So I think it's, and the main reason, this is the main reason that we brought in bonus points in the first place at the start of season 2, so that it sort of equalizes that a bit, and it's not just, okay, you got really unlucky, you got 24.8, but your opponent got 25, and everyone else got 17k, but they get points and you don't. So I think those bonus points equal that out enough so that it isn't too big of a problem. One more comment was about, we had relatively easy seeds. As MrBlue already said, I think this season, so that we had a lot of perfect scores, a lot of draws in Division 1 especially, but even in some of the lower divisions. Which I think is mainly due to the countries we had. Division 1 also, out of the one country that might have been a bit more challenging, Guatemala, Division 1 had an incredibly easy seed, so that didn't help. So yeah, that's maybe something in the future where I'll look at seeds, and if it's a seed that's too easy for Division 1 or something like that, or any of the other divisions, maybe in the future, I mean, obviously I can't look at the Division 1 seeds because I'll be playing it, but I'll tell whoever will be looking at them to, if it's too easy, maybe choose a different one. And the last thing was there was one person who replied they didn't like that people got excluded in preseason because it was one person. I should probably also mention before that I read through the replies first in sort of the overview that Google Forms gives you, so that I wouldn't know who the comment was from, to sort of remove my initial bias I would have reading a comment from a certain person. There was still a couple of comments where I was like, hey, I know who that is from. I got one reply in German and I was like, yep, Boxer, I see you. I got I got one complaint in the things people didn't enjoy that was like deadline extensions, and I was like, yeah, steal this, Nick, I see you too. But yeah, most of the replies I didn't know who they were from initially, and then afterwards, once I sort of gathered everything and looked at it in detail, then I went to look at who commented what. And it was someone that got relegated last season, I think, out of Division 5 and sort of out of the league. It was kind of like, yeah, I would like to play, but I can't because I couldn't make it in through preseason. So that's another thing I'll talk about at the end, where I thought of something that could potentially maybe mitigate that a bit and sort of include those players that don't make it through preseason as well. And yeah, I'll talk about the deadline extension thing at the end too. But yeah, those were sort of the first three questions. So yeah, I'd like to, I mean, both of Zotomo and MrBlue answered the survey as well, so their opinions are in this too. But if you want to comment on some of the things I've said, feel free to do so now before we get into the second part of the survey.
Yeah, MrBlue, your thoughts about what you like, what you don't like, and
Yeah, no,
anything.
I definitely have something to say about this, of course, especially because Calamity did not really mention that much of the things that I said, I think. So, yeah, I can give my share on this as well. As for the practice, I think that yeah, like the amount of practice is indeed different for every map that you play. How much do you know about some country? How much do you need to learn about playing those areas? What I also do myself, besides playing some of the seeds, is actually also looking at the Google coverage and yeah, make sure that I know where the coverage is. Yeah, find some areas that are looking similar to or different than others, for instance, so that you get used to that a little bit. Remembering city names is something that I really do as well. So yeah, those kind of things go outside of the actual practice of the seeds, to be honest. So I think that that is also something that people do and people may not do. So that is when it comes to the training bit. What they like and what they do not like. Yeah, for me, I think that this whole competition is yeah, standing out from anything else so far. A little bit more about that later on, but hey, that's another thing. But I do like this 1 versus 1 setup. I like the competitiveness. Indeed, the thing that brings out the best of the players. That's just the way it goes in this competition. What I do not like is losing. And it comes to the other thing that you said. Oh yeah, I was actually happy to see that a few things that you mentioned as what people do not like are actually going to be in be sort of solved in the competition that I'm going to organize from this week onwards, the Map Battle League. So the repetitive of maps, we're not going to have that because there's like 84 different maps every week that people can play and can choose themselves, sort of. So that's something that they can work on with that. So that I like to hear that a little bit. Same goes for the promotion opportunities. I think for Division 4 and 5. I'm not sure if Calamity, if you have seen how I'm going to do that in that division, in that league. But what I've done myself is to actually have in Division 5, which is the only division that is split up there. I have given more promotion playoff spots, and I'm going to have 6 people from every division to join the playoff spots, and then also from Division 4, there will be some people also in the relegation spots, relegation playoffs, and we're going to mix them up, like playing across divisions as well, so that the chance of promoting is higher. Actually, that is the the way I have resolved that myself. Yeah, and then indeed the 12 players that you mentioned, like in my competition, they're going to be 14. So I'm going to look forward to see how that is going to work out. In the end, that's only 1 week extra, so or 2 weeks extra. But yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I definitely think that the 1v1 is one of the strongest things about Reddit League. I know it puts a lot of pressure on people, and you're like, well, if I played this person another week, that would have been better. But it is something that does give weaker players a bit of a chance, right? If it's not like, okay, I'm always going to get 22,000 points or something like that. I'm not going to get close to 25. If I'm always against everybody else, I may not earn a single point the entire season. But so, coming from somebody in Division 4, right, I can have a bad week and maybe my opponent does too, and I still get a win, right? And so that's kind of the nature of sports in general.
I was
So
going to say
it's great to see that.
in any sport is like this, isn't it? Like in
Yeah,
football as well,
yeah.
you have your home advantage. You have your every top team has their bad days as well, and yeah, that happens.
Yeah, like I mean, I've beat Still This Nick in the last 2 seasons when he was undefeated up to that point. So it's just like you just have a good week, and that's part of a sport and part of a competition, which is agonizing when you're on the wrong side of it, but also amazing and makes for great stories and wonderful conversation. And that's why we love sports, and that's why we love esports competitions like this, for sure. As someone who doesn't practice a whole lot, I pretty much am one of those people who only play the other divisions, and it's because of burnout. Like, I do the Reddit League shows, I do the casts, and I have a busy life with my family and everything. So I really just don't have the time. I would love to practice 20, 30 games a week, but that's just not going to happen. So I kind of just have to, resolve and say, hey, I can play the other seeds. I can kind of check the coverage, like you said, MrBlue, but, and then I have to kind of let it go and say, what, that's the best I can do, and just kind of accept the result. It's not nice all the time, but just kind of what you have to do. And, so far I've been able to avoid burnout. And so I would definitely say, hey, if you are experiencing that burnout, don't be afraid to say, what, maybe Division 3 is a good seed division for me, or maybe Division 4 is a good division for me, given my life situation and everything. Like, so just enjoy the game. I know I love to play it. I'm sure we all do. So just because we can't all be in Division 1 and compete against Boxa doesn't mean we can't enjoy just playing the game and having fun.
I can say something more about that myself,
Mhm.
because like what I can see in the map battle league that I'm going to organize is that some of the players that are actually in the lower divisions in Reddit League are ending up in the higher divisions in the map battle league, and the other way around as well. So that can mean a few things. That can mean that the competitiveness of the players in the lower divisions is actually able to match up with the people in the higher divisions, and it can also mean that the players that are in the higher divisions in the Reddit League are taking it a little bit less serious, and then end up in the lower divisions in the other competition. And I think that's just a natural thing, and it's very good that that kind of thing happens, because people need to be aware of what their max is, and how they make this game stay funny for them and nice.
Yeah, I would quickly mention it could also mean that, the preseason wasn't very good in ordering people based on division. So I would wait until we're through with the season, and then I'd be like, okay, it was actually, a good job of the preseason. People are in the division they should be in, rather than just, because I think the preseason of that, but I mean, we're getting a bit off topic here, but just quickly, the preseason had like 3 relatively easy maps, and then one that pretty much decided most of where people are going to end up with.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the same thing in Reddit League as well, where you just have a short preseason. You can't really do much more than that especially at the start, for a first season of a competition. You're just gonna have to quickly order a lot of people into different categories. And I think that's also like a bonus for Reddit League at this point, where we've already had 4 seasons. So I think most of the, ordering people based on, their skill has already been done through those 4 seasons. So divisions are now relatively even, where I think that will just, happen over the course of a couple of seasons in the Map Battle League as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Okay. I know the remaining questions on the survey, Calamity, were just more like technical details. Do you want to just kind of run through those as quickly
Yeah.
as you possibly can, just to let people know the possible rule changes and things that are being considered for season 5?
Someone wants to go to sleep. Yeah,
Yes, I do.
there's a couple I can go through relatively quickly. Question 4 was tiebreaker for games, which is something that doesn't actually happen all that often. It pretty much only comes into play for what is if it's a decider between 6th and 7th, or like 5th and 6th in a 10-player division. So who goes the bonus point to, or in the playoffs later on when there's no draws anymore. And in that one, which up until now was distance, more than half of the participants said they'd prefer time. With 56%, 24% said they'd still prefer distance, and 20% said, which I was actually surprised that it was that low, because it seemed like the best option for me personally. But maybe also some people didn't quite understand what I meant, because I didn't specify it fully. 20% said both time and distance, but time being the more important factor. So what I mean by that is mostly like, hey, if 2 people get 25K in a final or a semi-final, then what first decides is the time. But if the time is like, hey, it's they're within a minute of each other, for example, and one person was like 20 meters away in total, and one person was 200 meters away, then the person who's 20 meters away wins the game, regardless of if he was like 5 seconds slower or something like that. Which I think personally is a bit fairer than just saying, hey, he was 2 seconds quicker, so he's gonna win it, even if he was, didn't pinpoint one round, but got lucky that he was somehow close enough. Because in the end, time sort of brings similar problems with it as just distance, although in a slightly different way, because distance is generally just Google sometimes being slightly off, whereas time feels a bit more random in a way, like, hey, you spent 2 seconds longer to load the first image, and that's why you lose, something like that. And I also think, like, if you make time the sole decider, then it would put more pressure on people to play fast, leading to more mistakes. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. I haven't thought too much about that point yet, but that's another thing to keep in mind when deciding about that. But I do think, like, from next season forward, we're gonna make time a more important part of Timebreakers. Whether it's gonna be the sole Timebreaker, I don't know yet. The next one, pretty similar, tiebreaker for standings, which is a bit more important because it happens a bit more often, which for now was the perfect games. And I didn't actually hear many complaints about that so far. I just thought, perfect games, a perfect game is something special. It should definitely get rewarded, but you also already get a bonus point for it. So it kind of feels like too much if it's also the tiebreaker, beyond just being a bonus point. And in terms of like deciding between the two, because you could also take the bonus point away and make it the tiebreaker. But I thought, like, a 25K is special, so it should give you that bonus point. But maybe let's not make it the tiebreaker in the standings as well. And I think most people agreed with me there, as 24% said they like perfect games as a tiebreaker, which was still the second most popular option, but the highest by pretty far, actually, with 44% were saying, hey, the total score should be the tiebreaker. So if you've just played better over the course of the whole season, you got more points, then you should get rewarded for that. And I tend to agree with that. 20% said that they like the direct result between tied people, which I also like. It's something that a couple of, again, talking about football, a couple of football leagues have as the tiebreaker. Some others don't. I think it's not the worst idea, but it might feel a bit too random again in like over the course of a whole season. If it just comes down to, hey, in that one game I maybe lost by 1 point, and that's why my whole season is, I mean, it also already happens that way anyway, but I feel like it might be a bit too random. And yeah, then 12%, which I actually found quite funny that was that low. That was probably one of the answers I least expected that I got from the survey. Only 12% wanted the score difference to be the decider. So a very unpopular option, that one. So we're not going to do that one. Next question was actually another one that I found super interesting to read through. which I also expected to be kind of very split, was handpicked locations, where essentially I sort of summarized them, and I was out of the 23 replies I actually got on that question, 9 people were positive towards it, 6 people were negative towards it, and 8 people were either like neutral, saying like, I wouldn't mind it, or, you know, I can see positives and negatives, or they were like, I don't particularly care. 8 people in that one. So there were definitely some valid concerns there, from the people who were either neutral or negative towards it, such as, you know, you could maybe find patterns in it. You could, I know Zotomo wrote, I think it'd be more work for the organizers, which is probably the main reason why Schmingo didn't do it up until now. But I think just creating, for me personally, just creating 5 seeds or 4 seeds and having someone else create the Division 1 seed every week wouldn't be that much trouble. I also know someone wrote they think that the map maker's personality in choosing locations is a part of the game, figuring that out. And to that I thought, well, but if I'm the map maker, then you figure out my personality while playing through the seeds. So I didn't quite understand that point, but I just wanted to mention it quickly. So yeah, I think I'm definitely gonna now, as I said previously, I'm gonna make the preseason for season 5 handpicked locations, and then I'm definitely gonna look at that and see how that went, and I'm gonna see, did people like it, did people not like it, and I'll use that to decide going forward. I could also see maybe not, you know, have handpicked locations for everything, but, you know, just for some maps in a particular season. So maybe if there's like, because I don't want to narrow down potential countries or states that we could have just because there's no good map for it. So maybe if it's like we have, I don't know, Arkansas as a US state and there's no good map for it, then maybe for that week I'll create the seeds myself, handpicked. And for everything else, it's still normal. Maybe I also thought there were a couple of answers that were like they prefer curated seeds from normal maps. So they were kind of like, you can just pick a, you know, create a couple of seeds and then choose one that's suitable, but still have it be a seed from the official map or from one of the maps that was chosen. My original point why I kind of thought of handpicked location in the first place, because some people would have said, I know Blinky complained about that one round in Japan that MrBlue mentioned earlier. And some people would think maybe it's because, you know, to get better quality locations, but that wasn't actually like my main point. My main point was to get rid of repeats, because I think repeats aren't really something that should exist in GeoGuessr, because it just rewards you for something that you didn't really do anything towards. You just got lucky that you got a repeat. And I definitely differ here between like, hey, this is the exact location that I had in practice, so I know where it is, and, you know, this is 2 blocks over from where I had in practice. That's very different to me. So I just don't really like repeats being a thing. And I know it's been that way forever, and it's just a part of GeoGuessr. But if I somehow can get rid of them without anyone complaining about it, I'd like to do so. But yeah, as I said, I'll look at how the preseason goes with handpicked locations, and then I'll decide going forward. The season 5 will be probably 99% sure will be curated seeds from, you know, normal maps. So I'll go through. I'll pick a map as always at the start of the season, and then I'll go through a couple of seeds until I find one that's, you know, suitable, and then I'll choose that for the official seed. Next question, another one that was slightly controversial, just in the sense that we got a lot of different answers, was how long should it be until maps come back into the map pool? And about 40% said they'd want maps to come back after 5 seasons or longer, which I tend to agree with right now, sort of being like, hey, you know, it's been 2 years. Out of the like 40, 50 people that originally took part in Reddit League Season 1, there's maybe like 10, 15 left. And, you know, they probably can't remember anything about the map they played 2 years ago. So why not give it back into the pool? Obviously, the argument is always, well, then that will just take a spot of a different fun map that you could play a different country, and that might not come into it. But I also thought about maybe like I put them back into the map pool, but I give a higher weight to countries that haven't been chosen yet. So maybe they're more likely to come in. But at the same time, if luck wants it to be that way, then maybe we'll get the old country back as well. About 20% said they wanted to come back after 1 or 2 seasons, so relatively quickly. About 15% said, about 15% each said they either want them to come back immediately, and the other 15% said they only want them to come back if the map pool has completely run out. And then 10% said they'd want them to come back after the pool has gone down to a certain number of maps, which I also don't mind personally, even though it wasn't the most popular answer, which is kind of based on, hey, how many maps does that pool have in the first place? So for a map pool like Africa, where you only have like 7 or 8 countries, maps would come back into the pool quicker. But for something like Europe, you're probably not going to see a country anytime soon again. That's also something that I could potentially think of. But, right now, I kind of like the idea of bringing back maps after maybe like 4 or 5 seasons, and then giving other maps, like maps that we haven't played yet, just a higher weight or in that regard. And then we have one last question before I talk quickly about some of the other ideas that I had based on some of the things I read in the survey. The last last question was that the map pool currently consists of world, continent, and country. And I asked just people if they wanted more variety, if they wanted something else in there as well. Whether I didn't actually specify what that would be, I could potentially see like maybe probably not city maps unless they're like super difficult cities, like something like Jakarta, for example, or I don't know, some huge metropolitan areas. But something else that I thought of were potentially like theme maps, which again would be handpicked, but something like the one idea I had, which I probably wouldn't choose because I don't think it's a good idea, but just to give you an example, would be like just the 1,000 tallest buildings in the world, and then I choose like 5 each for every seed, just as a general example of what a theme map could be. Again, something that maybe could be used in the future to replace some of the world maps to make them feel less same-ish. But yeah, again, something to maybe look at with season 6. And some other ideas I had concerning the survey was there was one comment I had about including aces in the official sheet, which I thought was a reasonable request, so I'll do that from next season forward. I also thought about, Nick, I'm listening to you. I thought about the deadline extensions. And I'm not entirely sure what to do about it yet, but what I thought of was giving people like a maximum of 2 deadline extensions per season, which I think like very few, if any, people actually hit anyway. But that way you don't feel like people are extending, the deadline every week, and you actually see how often people did that. Because I do have to admit, it did feel like it kind of took over towards the end of last season, where like every week there were like 6, 7, 8 deadline extensions. It felt a bit much towards that. So maybe I'll implement some kind of system like that, just so that you can actually, as I said, see, okay, this person has only taken 1 deadline extension. Okay, he can have another one. And then maybe some kind of system where like if it's really an emergency and they've already taken 2 deadline extensions, like they can have a week where they don't get any points for it, but they also don't get a yellow card or a red card, something like that maybe. And one more idea I had was regarding the one thing I said earlier about the comment about people getting excluded in preseason, was to run something similar to a normal Geoguessr League alongside the main Reddit League, where essentially everyone who wants to participate and hasn't made it into the league system can just play an extra seed every week alongside. And at the end of the regular season, after like 11, 12, 13 weeks, the 1 or 2 people who are at the top of that league get a guaranteed spot in the league next season. just something like that I thought would be quite nice, because I think the main reason why you have preseason in the first place is not necessarily to just get the best players in, but just to see if the people actually have the commitment required to play like 4 or 5 seeds in a row, and not miss any, or like tell someone if they're gonna need an extension. So I think if someone actually goes through like 13 weeks of that secondary competition and plays every week, then I think they've shown that commitment, and I think they deserve to be in the league. So I just thought that would be quite a nice idea. And yeah, that's pretty much it from the survey for me. Any more comments?
No, lots of interesting ideas for sure. Looking forward to what you will bring to the Reddit League Calamity in the weeks to come. And yeah, thank you all for watching us this season. It has been quite a ride up and down. And again, congrats to Boxa on taking the Division 1 title, yes, but the Season 4 title, even more important than that. And we will see you all next season. But we also have got a couple extra bonus shows coming your way. An award show is something we always do. So definitely, if you want to catch that, our best picks from the season, as well as lots of interesting stats for you, will be up in a couple of weeks probably. And so definitely hit that subscribe button so you won't miss that one. And we will see you in the cast videos. If you haven't checked out the actual matchups between Raidman and Boxa, head over there to watch how that all unfolded round by round. And we'll see you next season. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.